Shalom. Before I get started, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachah Kodash. I want to say double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And also peace and safety to the Akim that spread across the four corners of the world that's pushing out this truth with all diligence and putting their lives on the line to do so. I'm the brother Karatazar here of Great Millstone, Atlanta. Back again with another lesson. As you can see on the title of the screen, which it says U.S. judge temporarily blocks lifting of deportation protections from Haiti migrants. So basically, Trump, the U.S. President Donald Trump, he basically signed the order, to lift the ban off of, or the protection, off of, Haitian immigrants that's here in America. And the federal judge, went behind him, or after him and temporarily blocked the lifting of the ban, So if the Haitians are the so-called Haitians, come from the tribe of Levi, which is part of the southern kingdom of Israel, And the scriptures speak of, Jacob's trouble. And that means all 12 tribes, man, are going to get persecuted, by this devil. And a point that stood out, in this, article, or in the title of it necessarily is the temporarily block, because at the end of the day, the prophecies has to come to pass. No matter how you want to look at it, Jake has to be persecuted, coming from all 12 tribes. So even though the judge temporarily blocked it, it's something that's going to happen to where these tribes are going to continue to get persecuted, continue to get, deportated, the scriptures speak about it. I'm going to read a little on the article. It says a federal judge has temporarily blocked the Trump administration attempt to end deportation protections for more than 350,000 Haitian immigrants who are allowed to live in the U.S. legally under temporary protected status, or TPS. It says a day before the TPS was set to lapse, U.S. Judge Anna Reyes said the Department of Homeland Security boss doesn't have the facts or law on her side. Plaintiffs charged that Secretary Kristi Noem preordained her termination decision and did so because of hostility to non-white immigrants. This seems substantially likely, Reyes wrote. The administration has argued that TPS schemes attract illegal immigration have long been abused and extended by Democrats. You see, so, it's basically like a bickering, a back and forth, between the governments. All right. And, but the going back to the initial point, these the persecution is about to start, so this is 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 17. For the time is come that judgment must begin at the house of the Most High. And if it first begin at us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of the Most High? You see? So it says the time has come, that the judgment must begin at the house of the Most High. All right? And if us, like the scriptures say, that we are persecuted for righteousness' sake. And what about, these people that don't obey the gospel, man? Of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. They're going to get persecuted even, heavier, man. And it's not going to be a reward for them. All right? So that article said over 350,000 Levites, man. That's a large number, you know, to be sent back over to Haiti. All right. So you better believe it. You know, you may think, that you good, but if if you had any sense of who your enemy was and how he moves, and you seen this, you would have some type of fear, some type of fright, towards, what the government is trying to do. All right. It started with Northern Kingdom, Asher, who else? Some of Simeon, Manasseh, getting, deportated, Issachar, and it's spreading all throughout, the 12 tribes, man. And like I said, I keep saying the persecution is gonna continue to grow. This is verse 18. And it says, if the righteous scarcely be saved, like the brother here, Goliath, in Atlanta, that word scarcely goes into almost not. So if the righteous almost not be saved, it says, where shall the ungodly and the sinner appear? You see? So if the righteous scarcely be saved, what about the ungodly and the sinners, man? They're going to have a greater judgment, on the wrong side of the Lord, man. Because they didn't take heed to the law, statutes, and commandments that the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushua, wanted us to keep. Okay? So 2026, has been already, we only in the beginning of the second month, so-called month. And the persecution of Israel has been heavy already, man. Which leads me to Revelation chapter 12 and verse 12. It says, therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath. You see, so that law, or that TPS, that's over. This is just one instance, but that law, the TPS that's protecting you, you Levites. When that ban is uplifted, that great wrath, is there. Imagine, having, to still get your daily bread, work, go out to the grocery stores and so on and so forth, knowing that, at any moment, you can get sent back to a land that's poor. Who lack, resources and jobs, and you coming from America. Some of those, Levites, never even really been home, man. Especially like the younger ones, they may have visited, but they haven't lived there and really felt, the curses, that's on that land, and Hispaniola. All right, they never really felt that. So imagine, if they would, get deported back, to their homeland or their so-called homeland, and they gotta feel that, man. So the judgment is here, man. That great wrath. The devil is bringing that great wrath, man. Not all because, but. And we really don't, feel any type of way about it because you people don't consider. Like the scripture said in 1 Peter, it says, what more of the ungodly, or them that not obey the gospel, you're not taking heed to the prophets and the prophets' words, man. All right. It says, "For the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he have but a short time." So if you know that you have a short time, anything, what are you going to do? You're going to rush. You're going to make, big moves like for instance, for brothers that's into sports, if you down 6 points, right? In 2 minutes in football, you down 6 points. A field goal isn't enough to win the game. You have to get in the end zone in 2 minutes and under with 0 timeouts. You have to rush. You have to do a no huddle offense, man. And that no huddle offense, you got to have at least 1 or 2, big plays in order to get, to that end zone, man. All right. So this devil, we already see, the position that the Lord, or the corner that the Lord backed him into, and this devil go try to fight his way out of it, man. All right. And these examples, such as northern and southern kingdom being deported back to their homelands, or so-called homelands, is one example of many that this devil is going to try to do. He's fighting. Like R. Kelly, he said, "I'm fighting for my life." This devil is fighting for his rank, or his power seat, man. And he feels as though if he keep and continue to keep, the foot on the necks of the Lord's children, that's how he's going to keep his power. But it's not going to work. Job, the 20th chapter, tells us that, man. All right. So I'm going to go to, from here, I'm going to go to Jeremiah 30. On 7, I'm going to close up here. It says, "Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it." And we always go into this verse. This verse is, especially this year, it's probably one of the most read verses, this year, because we're living in those times, man, to where, the immigration, with ICE is getting closer and closer to our homes, to where certain people we may know, who's going through these things, getting deported back to their so-called home, man. But it says what? But he shall be saved out of it. And we always go into that, who he is, that here in this verse is speaking of the elect. The elect of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. It says, verse 8, "For it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, that I will break his yoke from off thy neck, and will burst thy bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him." You see? So the Lord is going to, break the yoke, and the bonds off of our neck, from this devil, from the shackles of this of these heathens, man, mainly the so-called white man, Esau, But the persecution, has to come first, the day of Jacob's trouble. In which we say these are to be living in it right now. It may not seem like it, because you can still go to work, you can still buy tickets to your concerts and games and so on and so forth. But hey, we living in those times, man. Imagine if you couldn't go to work, and you couldn't go to work. You had curfews, you getting deported, what else? Lack of, stores are open, and, lack of food, the scriptures speak of famine. Imagine all of those things happening, which they are, it's just like I said, you still have the ability to continue to go to work and have a little so-called freedom. You know, here in America is how the devil is tricking you and making it seem as though none of this stuff is happening. All right, but alas, for that day is great. You know, we are here for the time. Like I said in 1 Peter 4, for the time has come. You know, we're living in those times, man, where the persecution of Jacob, of Israel, you know, is here. All right. So I just wanted to briefly touch on that. You know, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I'm going to close up by giving all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Until the next time, shalom.